closing training. Lance, I understand you're up in New York?
Yes, Bob, and I'm not that I don't like New York, but I'm glad to be back in the 75-degree weather here in northwest Arkansas. It was 39 degrees and raining both days when I was in New York.
Well, I was scrolling down our
New York, but not 39 and rain.
I love it. I was scrolling down our attendee list. I see we have our friends up in Alaska, Northern California, Oklahoma. Welcome all. You know the drill. You know how to ask questions, so let's get right to the polls. Question number 1. Is your bank involved in small business franchise lending? We got Zip. We've only done a couple, and we're experts at 5 or more.
I think the thing I was looking for here, Bob, is just to get an idea of what they're doing. As a small business lender myself, I always enjoyed franchise lending opportunities because quite often they were proven. But I was just curious what our group was doing.
See, we got 9% says we have Zip, and the rest are 45%, 45%. Call it 50% 2 to 5 and 42% over 5. So
good.
That's where we are. Question number 2. Do you reconcile the transcripts when received from the IRS? Yes, we review them and check the date and sign. We write a memo of reconciliation with a signature date. Nah, we just file them away. Even I know the answer to this one, Lance. I know it's not C.
Well, I'm just curious because in doing some file reviews, including this week in New York,
you've seen it that way. I know, yes.
There are a couple of ways to deal with the transcript reviews. And some people will just go through and check along the transcript, make notes, and then sign the actual transcript. And that's acceptable. But a preferred or best practice is the memo of reconciliation with the signature and date.
And 75% of us are doing that.
Good.
And the other 25% are doing option 2. So we're preaching to the choir here today, Lance.
Hey, Bob, the thing that surprises me is nobody would fess up to just putting the tax transcript with the 4506T. And the reason I say that is I would say 80% of the files I review, Bob, have the tax transcripts just thrown in with the 4506T. No evidence of ever reconciling.
Take a look at it. Question number 3. Is your bank usually able to get a required landlord waiver signature? A, yes, we are successful every time. B, we only close the loan. We usually close the loan without getting it signed. C, no, we have to send a servicing action to SBA to get it waived.
You know, this is a nice poll question, Bob, because I think we have an actual question about a landlord waiver today.
Good. And 100% of the audience says, yes, we always are successful in getting that. So
that amazes me as well,
I'm
Bob.
surprised too.
My experience with landlord waivers, I can't tell you how many times they refuse to sign.
Talk about week 6. The topic was other loan closing documents. What's my takeaway, Lance?
Well, I just think the
Excuse me.
Probably the 3 most important things of the week, and not to minimize all of the topics of the week, understanding the affiliation concept and how to deal with closing a loan on a franchise operation. The critical importance, I can't overemphasize the importance of the 4506T, getting the transcripts and reconciling. I see more issues when the guaranteed purchase is submitted to SBA because they didn't do it. They didn't do it properly. So that's critically important. The other thing is insurance coverage. It really surprises me when I review SBA files how many people don't get the required insurance that the authorization states that you need to have. And the other thing that's fun, Bob, is we have a great insurance question this week as well.
Well, let's get to the questions. Number 1, regarding insurance. That was a nice segue, Lance. Here's our scenario. A loan closes COP and is in servicing. All required insurance documents are received prior to closing and funding. Down the road, the life insurance becomes too expensive for the borrower, and we allow the borrower to cancel the policy. Do we have to notify SBA? And if so, is it a Form 327 action?
Guys, this one is a very important one to handle properly. And the reason I say that, if your loan defaulted, you let the borrower cancel, and you didn't submit a request to SBA, you potentially could get a repair for the full amount of the insurance policy if the obligor died. And I know there's some risk, there's certainly risk involved there. How to handle this, and it's not an uncommon servicing request. When I was at the Little Rock Center, Bob, the servicing department handled requests like this on a daily basis from banks. You have a borrower my age. I was going to say you have an old borrower. You have a borrower.
A really old one.
I'm completely confused now. You have somebody my age who is your obligor, and I was required to get $500,000 worth of life insurance on the loan. You know, it's not too horribly expensive right now. Probably cost me about $250 a month. 5 years from now, I was talking to my financial advisor. That same insurance is going to more than double in price on me because I hit a critical age point. It's not unusual for the life insurance to become expensive, but you do need to submit a servicing request to, and most of our callers, with the exception of our fine Oklahoma participant, most of our callers are West Coast, so you're going to submit a request to Fresno, write a nice memorandum stating, hey, we got term life insurance for $500,000 when we first got it. The price was reasonable. Now the price is too expensive and is causing cash flow issues with the borrower. We would like to allow the borrower to cancel that policy, and you'll get a response back from them. That's the way to handle that one. And in Oklahoma, you submit that to Little Rock, our West Coast friends, and our great friends up in Alaska, who I sure hope invite me to come see them someday, Bob, are going to submit that request to Fresno.
Lance, would we ever want to do a forced placement? Have you ever seen something like that in life insurance?
I've got to be honest with you, Bob. I've never seen somebody force place life insurance, and SBA does not beat you to death on this servicing action. I can never remember, Bob, us wearing out a participant bank on a request to get rid of the life insurance when it got excessively expensive. Quite often when you submit your loan request, you're going to get a life insurance coverage amount back in your authorization, and very frequently you've got an obligor who goes out and prices that, and it's too expensive. I mean, the National Guarantee Processing Center gets tons of requests to waive the life insurance requirement because it's too expensive. SBA's SOP basically states, Bob, that it can be waived if the premium causes a hardship on the small business entity.
Which is why we're doing this, yes. Very good. Thank you, Lance. Email question number 2. The bank makes an interim conventional loan to finance the startup cost of a franchise business, including construction costs. In anticipation of paying off that loan with the SBA loan, will the purpose of the loan be debt refinance, or is it still funding the construction and the cost of the startup?
Well, and I provided a response. A lot of it depends on how you submit the request. If you submit it as a startup, then you're going to have to submit a loan authorization change request indicating that you did an interim loan and the use of proceeds will pay off that interim loan. That's not going to require anything special. If you've done the interim loan prior to submitting the SBA application, then it becomes a refinance request, a debt refinance request. So a lot of it depends on where you are in the process. If the application's already been submitted and it was a startup, then you're just going to submit a loan authorization change request indicating that you're going to pay off an interim loan, get it approved. That's all you've got to do. If you already did the interim financing and now you're submitting the SBA request, then it's a debt refinance request.
Great. Landlord waiver question. Most lease locations state that anything attached to the lease space wall stays with the lessor. How will this work when we need to collect, we take it down shelves or whatever, does the landlord waiver become null and void?
Bob, we actually had a fight with the landlord, and I put on my boxing gloves. Now, they make an excellent point. Things that are attached to the building belong to the landlord, and you get the landlord waiver, but permanent fixtures typically...
we're not stripping out copper pipes or lights, I assume.
But we had a restaurant that was in a leased location, and they had this expensive vent-a-hood, and we were able to prove that we could remove that. We removed it and repaired the ceiling where it vented out. The landlord didn't want to allow us to do it, but we actually did it because it took up $25,000 of the proceeds putting this expensive vent system in, and we didn't want to let that go, and we turned around and were able to liquidate it for $5,000.
Right.
But it only cost us a couple $100 to repair the roof. So that, again... those items that are attached, you're not going to be able to get whether you have a landlord waiver or not.
Lance, you're in Arkansas in tornado warning alley. I'm in California with earthquakes. Are we going to require that type of hazard insurance when we have specialty issues such as hurricanes in Florida and the two situations I mentioned?
You know, Bob, this is an excellent question because when I saw the question, I had to go pull the SOP up and take a look at it. This is one of those prudent lending questions because you'll find earthquake and hurricanes not mentioned in the SOP. Mm-hmm. I think you've got to fall back on good prudent lending practices. If you made a commercial loan of similar type and size to a borrower as a non-SBA loan, would you require earthquake insurance? Would you require hurricane insurance? If you'd require it on a non-SBA loan, you better get it on the SBA loan.
And also the prudent factor comes into it is the cost. Earthquake insurance out here is horribly expensive, and what you get is minimal coverage. So I think you factor all that in as well.
Absolutely.
Very good. Go ahead, Lance.
And again, I was just going to state there's so many places that the SOP doesn't cover a particular topic. Always revert back to prudent lending, which means if you require it on a non-SBA loan, you better get it on the SBA loan.
And again, you're the arbiter of what is prudent. So that's
absolutely.
Do we have any more questions, Joseph? Anything come in? Tell us about week 7. I will give a preview to everyone. Lance, you will be in a little bit different setting. We had you out a couple weeks ago, and you did week 7 and 8. So you'll see Lance in a different light, shall we say.
Well, Bob, you guys tried as hard as you could to make me look professional. You actually get to see me in a coat and tie, which is nice, but it was fun doing these in the studio for you, and I think the quality is going to be even better for week 7 and 8.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell us about week 7. What are we talking about?
Well, the two critical topics. One, use of proceeds and the importance of documenting the disbursements on the loan and those disbursements matching up with the use of proceeds identified in the authorization, and if there is a change, making sure you get it approved. And the other thing is refinancing with SBA. I always tell banks, don't hesitate to look for opportunities to refinance loans, even loans within your own portfolio, but you need to understand the rules of refinancing and document your loan application properly. Again, I always revert back to loan reviews, Bob, but it seems like I'm reviewing loan portfolios all over the country. One of the most common mistakes that I see on refinancing same institution debt is they forget to get that transcript for 36 months or the life of the loan showing current payments. Yeah. So those are the two critical. The other topics, again, I don't want to minimize their importance or their importance, but I think use of proceeds and refinancing are the two key topics this week. Yeah,
and absolutely. And the key on the refinance, as you said, don't be afraid to refinance your same institution debt. But you have to prove, and the burden of proof is on you, is, hey, this is truly going to benefit the borrower. And make sure you document that very well, because if you go into an early default on that, SBA is going to assume that you were simply swapping out your position and transferring your risk to the government, which is not a place you want to be at.
Yeah, if you're refinancing same institution debt, you want to make sure you follow SBA's rules to the T.
But like you said, don't be afraid of it. And if it benefits the borrower, it's a win-win all around from that standpoint.
Hey, Bob, I got an opportunity to talk to a new SBA lender that just got their 750 agreement, and I actually did a short training with them on refinancing same institution debt. And I said, go look through your portfolio.
Yeah.
This is a great way to kickstart your SBA portfolio, but just make sure you follow the rules.
Very good. Very good. Well, with that, do we have any more questions? Everyone, enjoy your weekend, and I think you'll
Have a good weekend.
I think you'll like the new and improved Lance on Tuesday. Lance, take care. We'll see you next week.
Thanks. Have a good weekend.